Okay, this week I'm back with some more changes to Galadriel. Maybe these the final changes I'll need to make, and the deck will be finalized. Let's get going. First card I took out is Growth Spiral. Now, in this deck, Growth Spiral is actually a very good card, because after you scry, you can draw what you scryed for on the top of your deck if you need it. You can also, if you put a land on top, you can draw that land, put it on so it acts like a rampant growth. You do it at instant speed. It's cheap to cast. But I still have Galadriel's Mirror and Council's Deliberation. The Council's Deliberation, of course, the second activation is free, because if I scry and I have an island, I can simply exile it from a graveyard to get whatever card I put on top of my library. Whatever I left on top of the scry, if I need it. But that said, I had to start making cuts to put in what I wanted. So Growth Spiral is coming out, and what went in its place is Essence Warden. In a recent game, I was playing against Grimgrin and the Sliver Bastard that gives all your slivers indestructible. So it was a 3-man game, and Grimgrin player was using that 2 colorless 1 black enchantment, I think it's Bastion something, where anytime a creature dies, you drain your opponent for 1 per creature. So I was getting down in life. I didn't have that many ways of getting life, and I realized the deck wants Essence Warden. At least the way I play the deck wants Essence Warden. So she went in instead of Growth Spiral. Plus, she's another cheap elf. At the time, the deck only had 27 elves, 28 creatures in total, the 28th being, of course, the Mirkwood Elk. And I want to pump up the number of elves. That was one of the goals I had in making these last changes. Devastation Tide. Some of you are going to think, okay, why are you taking out your removal spell? That makes no sense. Well, in that same game against Slivers and Grimgrin, so it was the first card I drew at one point, mid-game. I could have miracled it, but looking at it, Slivers had 7 lands, and if everything went back to their hands, on his turn, he would simply play the Sliver that gives all of them haste, played his, I believe it's Gem Hide, where you can tap a Sliver to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and he would have just dumped his hand back into play. He would have got the Crystalline Sliver out, the Haste Sliver out, he would have got his indestructible, Slivers are indestructible commander out, and all it would have done is prevented him from attacking for 1 turn. It would have wrecked Grimgrin, and it would have done nothing for me, because if I had to put everything back in my hand, I would not have been able to attack the Sliver player and try to take him out. So for those reasons, Devastation Tide is coming out. It's not a bad card. I've never actually cast it. I don't have much experience playing with it. But in its place, I'm putting in Mists of Lothlorien. Now this, you think, okay, you can't target the Slivers if you have Crystalline Sliver in play, but I can target my stuff. Keep that in mind. So, what I could have done if I had Mists of Lothlorien instead of Devastation Tide is put my Elvish Visionary back in my hand, replicated it to put my Asceticism back in my hand, and that would have removed his Crystalline Sliver. That would have removed at least his commander, the one that gives the slivers indestructible, plus at least 1 other sliver. I forget which other one cost 5 he had at the time, but those would have gone back to his hand. And since I had a bunch of other elves that cost around 3, and of course Galadriel, I get her out as quickly as possible. When I attacked, if he blocked, it would have killed some of his slivers. So it would have given him a hard choice, and it would have made my attack more profitable. So for that reason, Devastation Tide is out, Mists of Lothlorien is in. 2 colors, 1 blue, return target non-land permanent, and each other with the same mana value to the owner's hand and replicate. And remember, if their stuff is not targetable, your stuff is. Trap the Trespassers. Taking this out because it, even though it's an instant and it's good, so it just stops them for 1 or 2 turns. In the typical 3-man pods I play in, the one time I cast this, myself and another opponent voted for the same Eldrazi. We were playing against Eldrazi, and I believe my other opponent is playing Windgrace. And then the Eldrazi player just picked something on Lord of Windgrace's board because I had asceticism out and he couldn't target my stuff. So all it does is it taps down the creature for a couple of turns. Sometimes that's all you need. It just wasn't that exciting for me. So Trap the Trespassers is coming out. What's coming in, and this isn't exactly 1-for-1, but I'm just kind of going down the order. Like I said, I wanted more elves in the deck, and the holiday edition of Lord of the Rings has Elvish Harbinger, so I got this nice full border Elvish Harbinger, 2 colors, 1 green for a 1/2 elf druid. Search my library for an elf, reveal it, shuffle and put it back on top. Now, if I had Growth Spiral, I could use Growth Spiral to immediately draw that elf, but I also have Galadriel's Mirror to draw that elf. I have Council of Deliberation to draw that elf, and I have other ways of drawing cards. She also gives 1 mana of any color, which is a nice little add-on. In some play testing, it's worked out pretty good. Speaking of play testing, any of you that aren't goldfishing your decks, aren't just sitting down and just running through simulations, testing your draws, you're missing out. Something I realized with this deck is because I had taken out a lot of blue cards for green cards, is I was getting flooded by blue. So let's talk about the land excisions. I took out 2 islands, and so far I'm not missing them. So I took out 2 islands in favor of an Evolving Wilds and an Ash Barrens. This is actually, I'm going to replace this for a Rogue's Passage. I realize now I should have added it to the deck. I did not think of it at the time. One of the problems I'm having is that Galadriel, if she gets big, she doesn't have trample. There's limited ways of giving trample, so she's easily blocked. If I give her Whispersoak Cloak, she's not blockable, but if I try to put a +1/+1 counter, actually that doesn't target. There was something else that targets to make creatures bigger. If she's got the cloak, she cannot be targeted to get those +1/+1 counters. So I want to put a Rogue's Passage in to have more ways of making her unblockable, getting her through. Anyway, the reason I chose Ash Warden, Ash Barrens, and Evolving Wilds is not only to find a specific color, either a forest or an island I need, but also to shuffle the deck. Even though I don't scry that deep, the deepest I can scry is typically 3 with an Elvish Farsight. Sometimes it feels like I hit a land pocket, or I hit a pocket of cards that really aren't going to help me for the next few turns, and I need a way to shuffle the deck. So Evolving Wilds gives me another way of shuffling the deck. I don't like that a land comes into play tapped, but since there's only a couple of cards in the deck, the lands come into play tapped, I'm willing to accept it. So for mana fixing and shuffling the deck, Evolving Wilds is in. Same thing, land cycling. For mana fixing and to shuffle the deck, Ash Barrens. Okay, last real change, Lignify. This worked out pretty good. when I was playing against Eldrazi, because I was able to knock out one of his, I believe, one of the Ulamogs. So I turned one of his Ulamogs into a 0/4 tree, and he couldn't do anything. He can still kill it. He can still try to get rid of the enchantment, but it stops it for a few turns. But since I had to make some cuts for the things that I think will really help me more, I'm taking out Lignify. And in its place, I'm putting in Andiril, Narcel Reforged. So this is sweet. For 2 colorless, I get a legendary equipment with a 3 equip cost. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, all my creatures get a +1/+1 counter. Not targeting, they just get a +1/+1. If I have the city's blessing, they get 2. So this helps me go wide. This helps me go wide a bit faster. This feeds into the game plan I have in mind for the deck. So for that reason, this is coming in. And in the gold fishing I've done, I've actually managed to get this in play, and it works pretty damn good. I like it. So hopefully it's as nice in an actual game. Last card, I did not take anything out for this yet. I kind of have it on tap in case I decide I need it. Glorious Scale. 1 in a blue, counter target creature spell. If it was a legendary, the ring tempts me. I'm not sure what I would take out for this. That's why I haven't done so yet. Maybe Press the Enemy is not as impressive as I think it's going to be, and I will want this instead. Against Slivers and Eldrazi, both of the decks that give Galadriel a lot of trouble in the games I've played. This would be pretty good against them. I can counter Mage Eldrazi. I can counter the Sliver Commander, force him to go back to the command zone, because he's typically not going to put in his graveyard. So those are the changes I made to Galadriel. Let me take a couple minutes and talk about the experience of playing the deck. So as I've made these changes, the deck has started to play more like one of my decks. It doesn't feel like it did when I first was playing it, after I made the first changes, taking out the Hornet Queen, taking out the Colossal Whale, the first series of changes. It still, at that time, played more like Wizards intended. More of a voting randomness, a bit of randomness deck, because you don't know how the vote is going to go. Now it plays more like an elf combat deck, pumped up by the voting, with that as a nice backup, a neat way of adding flavor to the deck. So with the inclusions that I've made, more elves, and Dirtle, if I go wide, it's a lot more reliable. The elves get pumped up better. And then, of course, my other plan of winning the game, to do hit somebody with commander damage Galadriel, that is still working really well. Something I've noticed, though, the original article that I used to review the changes to get ideas for the Lord of the Rings only cards I want to include, because this deck, again, is only going to be Lord of the Rings cards. It's not going to have any cards from any actual Magic set unless they have been reprinted as a Lord of the Rings card, to keep the flavor, to keep the feel. But anyway, the author had said she's not good for drawing cards. She kind of sucks. The way the lads I play with, they started realizing that giving me a card whenever an elf comes into play is better than me pumping up Galadriel and being able to attack with my Ring Bearer commander. So they started giving me the card instead of voting with me for Dominion. Because in any case, if I hit the second trigger, the second ability, whenever she attacks, I draw a card anyway. Even though I discard a card, I'm still drawing another card. and they decided that's a more undesirable result than me just filling my hand a little bit. Anyway, those are the changes. I'll get this posted. Let me know what you think. And a final note, if any of you are planning to play Galadriel, to buy the deck and modify it, if you're going to duplicate any of my changes, make sure you consider your own play environment. A lot of the changes I've made, and you've heard me cite them specifically, have been fueled by actual games where some of the card was less than stellar. And if you're not facing those kind of decks, or those specific decks, some of the changes I've done might not suit you. So just keep that in mind. But again, I highly recommend the deck. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.